Ladies and gentlemen of the Randomness of Nothing, the T.R.O.N podcast, I want to welcome a very special guest today, and I am absolutely honored, pleasured, and definitely a little bit humbled that he took time out of his busy schedule today to reach out to me. He's a retired attorney, author, entrepreneur, and gives you the antidotes of success through his numerous writings, including the 12 Universal Laws of Success. This is Dr. Herbert Harris. Thank you so much, sir.
John, thank you so much for having me. I'm super impressed with the young people like yourself carrying the message of empowerment forward. Many things that we learned in my age have to be passed on. The laws are the laws, and we just try to share them and pass them on. So thank you for what you're doing, man, to have a platform like this.
Yeah, it definitely, it's definitely the seeds of what you do. And so obviously, somewhere in the universe, the reason why I started something like this was because, trailblazers such as yourself, paved the path for me to make a show like this. And so for you to be able to drop your knowledge on people, I've had a chance to listen to numerous things that you've done, and you're really open about sharing your laws of success with people. And you have a very compelling story. You're a retired attorney, you went to Columbia, and then you decided to pivot to public speaking, and you've been around the world, and you have translated books, and you're a public speaker. So just give a little background about yourself, please.
Well, I was very fortunate, Rashad. I've lived a long life. Someone would say, well, I was born in 1944.
Beautiful.
So I lived through the civil rights era, segregated schools, and I got a scholarship to go to Columbia University when I was 16.
That's amazing.
Yes.
That's absolutely.
And that was an Ivy League school for a young black man coming from a segregated high school in North Carolina.
That's amazing. Absolutely.
One of my classmates was Joe McNeil, who was one of the Greensboro Four that started the sit-ins in the South in 1961.
Oh my!
Yes,
wow.
I spoke at his funeral. He just passed about 2 months ago, and so I spoke at his funeral as one of the people who actually knew him.
Yeah.
And so living a long life has a number of advantages. You can see things firsthand. I was doing a talk with a group of a very diverse audience about the March on Washington. And the man basically challenged me and where do you get your information about the size of the march? I said, well, I was 63. I was in college at the march. And yeah.
Quick way to end an argument. That's a quick way to.
The idea that, this past generation now have seen things, and what we see are like the repetitions. We see things happening over. There's a political thing, there's a civil thing that's happening over and over.
Right.
And when you don't know the history, you can't respond to it based on experience.
I think too many times people get things off the internet and they don't believe that those are lived experiences, right?
Yes.
Right.
And the internet can tell you anything.
Right.
There's no fact checking anymore.
Right.
And so people have to know that just because it sounds good and just because the person looks good saying it, even if it's written, that the truth may not be in it.
Exactly.
And so we have to learn how to discern the truth.
Correct.
And so one of the goals of my generation is to help your generation be very aware of historical truths.
Correct.
Of, you might say, spiritual truths and operational truths.
Right.
And so, in the 12 Universal Laws of Success, we talk about the fact that one of the secrets of life, one of the great kings sent the wisest men of the kingdom out to find the secret of life. And they came back with 3 books about the size of this, the 12 Universal Laws of Success. And he said, too complicated, go back. They came back again with 1 sheet of paper. And on that 1 sheet of paper was this sentence: there's no such thing as a free lunch.
No lies.
Everything in life you have to work for.
No lies about that. And I look every day at your, you post very, very frequently. And one of the things that you post about, obviously we'll get into details of your book, is the procrastination and the self-motivation. And so I always find it fascinating when people, and I say this very respectfully, who did not have a lot of technological, availability at your time growing up, had to be very, very most self-motivating. You couldn't find things on YouTube or things that you had to seek, you sometimes had to find it from the ground up,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right.
That's a powerful piece, because when we needed to know stuff, we had dictionaries,
Yes.
encyclopedias.
Yes.
You know, as a child, I had like the only set of encyclopedias on the block. Okay.
I had a set in my room. That's one of the reasons I started this show, is because I had an encyclopedia set in my bedroom.
Yeah, you know. And I had the World Book when we had the World Book, and then we had the 𝐲𝐿s. The World Book had pictures, so
and that's a big deal, right? That's a huge big deal to have that, right? To have visual, because it just wasn't like that, right?
Yes, yes. And so what it said, though, there's one of the spiritual principles in the 12 universal laws of success, the law of persistence, and it says, "Seek and you shall find.
Beautiful.
Knocking it shall be opened. Asking it shall be answered."
Right.
And so the thought is, if you want to know something, then you have to put in the time and the work to get it.
You sure do. You sure do. You know, and
Yeah.
it sounds cliche, right? But like the reality about it is too, is that, you know, what you spoke on earlier was, it's one thing to Google something and to get the, you know, anybody can look up something, right? And
Mhm.
you know, we live in an era where everybody's a subject matter expert because they Googled it or because they Wikipedia'd it. But there's nothing trading life experience about something.
Exactly. Plus, you know, the mind is like a muscle. If you don't use it, you lose it.
Absolutely.
And so in my era of learning, you learn things and you couldn't just Google it. You had to remember it.
Right.
You had to be able to figure it out.
Right.
And so that's programming your mind. Your mind responds to you.
Right.
When we talk about the law of affirmation,
Yes.
when Muhammad Ali said, "I am the greatest," at first people laughed at him.
Yeah.
Okay. And I have to say, I was alive in that era, and I remember they called him the Louisville Lip. All he did was yak, yak. Howard Cosell said, "Yeah, the Louisville Lip," and he shouted it, "I am the greatest. I am the greatest."
Yeah.
But what you say about yourself determines who you are.
Absolutely. And you know, I was listening to one of your interviews, and I was listening to one of the quotes, and it said, you attract your thoughts, people, and experiences. And that's a book lifted directly from your quote. And it said, you know, it really is, you know, your mind and your attitude and your surroundings will ultimately cultivate how you actually function as a day-to-day human being.
Absolutely. And it's all about energy. You see, I studied physics in college, and Einstein had a formula, E=mc².
Yes.
E is energy or vibration, equals M, which is manifestation or mass, times the speed of light squared. So now, it's not necessarily a functional equation, although it does give you an idea, like it's one of the foundations of the atomic bomb, for example.
Correct.
Yeah, but it says this, that energy, any vibration, every thought is a vibration, has an equivalent manifestation.
Right.
And so the world that you experience is really one that you called into existence.
Yes.
You know, when you're walking down the street and you smile at someone, doesn't matter whether they speak English or not.
Yes.
If you smile at them, they smile back.
Yeah, it's universal. And correct. And it's weird because, you know, I've had a chance to talk to so many guests. It's almost like positivity is actually viewed in a bad way. Why is that person so happy all the time? Right. Like, it's flipped, right? Like, you're supposed to be miserable and complaining and sully, and, you know, but then when you see somebody who's genuinely happy, you know, people be grumbling, why, you know, that's James. Why is James always so happy singing all the time?
Yeah. But, you know, we live a life of example.
Yes.
You know, when I was in New York, when I practiced law for about 25 years, and everybody has to have, you might say, rules for their engagement. You know, in military, you have rules of engagement. And for me, I always wanted to be able to walk to work. I didn't want to be one of those people who had to commute and drive an hour to get to work. I'm not going to work if I got to drive an hour to get there. Okay. And so it was a part of my daily routine to walk to work. I was in Harlem. Yeah. I'd walk along 125th Street. I had a beautiful townhouse when you could buy them for $25,000.
Oh my! I was thinking that Bobby Womack song when you just said that, right?
Yeah. So I could walk along 125th Street in the morning, and I'd be suited and booted, you know, and people, "Good morning, how you doing?" Attorney, I'm doing great today. And I'm like, how are you? Pumped up, And at the elevator in the building, my law office was in the Teresa Towers, which is the Teresa Hotel.
Okay.
And the Teresa Hotel, just a little history, is the hotel when Castro came to visit America. He didn't want to stay downtown. He said, I'm going to stay uptown in Harlem. So he
Wow.
stayed at the Teresa Hotel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
This was a part, and the Teresa's still there. They had a ballroom on the top floor, and that's where a lot of the jazz musicians played there. The dances that were huge.
That's amazing.
Yes, but it became an office building, and it had an elevator operator. Like it was like a real person operating the elevator.
Mm-hmm.
And I came in this one day, man. I don't know what had happened in my life, but I was not smiling. I was not singing. I was not skipping. Okay. And I got on the elevator, and I'm like, good morning, Joe. He took me upstairs. So later that day, I see him. He said, Mr. Harris. He said, man, you messed me up. I said, what did I do? He said, you always come in here every day like, yes, good morning, Joe. What's going on? How you doing? What it is, brother? Everything is cool. He said, you came in here this morning. He said, my day went downhill from there.
Okay. And that's the energy you talked about with Einstein. That's
there
that energy.
So we as veterans, rather than senior, we are veterans. We have to realize that people live what they see.
They do.
And so if they see you happy, if they see you moving a certain kind of way, that's how they respond.
Right.
So many of us are examples, and I appreciate what you do, Rashad, because many times we will be examples and nobody's paying attention.
Listen, anytime somebody like yourself, sends a, DM, you have a million things that could be drawing your attention. And when I got that, I kind of stopped in my tracks because I'm supposed to be messaging you. And, it was, I really, truly am supposed to be. And so all of a sudden, as I got more familiar with your work and the things that you accomplished, it dawned on me that it was like the only reason that I have a chance to do things like that is because people like yourself planted seeds of allowing a platform like this. And so it's very, when you said, you're the example, right? It's like your kids, for example. If you always tell them to be quiet when they ask you a question or they're curious about something or, eventually they'll just start being quiet and stop talking and asking you questions. When in reality, they're supposed to be curious. They're supposed to want to learn about things. And you have to take yourself off like, okay, let me show you this because it helps them grow.
Yes. And that's critical. With children, love is spelled T-I-M-E.
Mm-hmm.
The time you spend with your kids, as a person I've raised, I have kids in all generations. The time you spend with your kids has more impact than all the gifts you buy them, all the sneakers, all the clothes, all the cars, whatever. The time you spend with them. One of the things that I challenge, so often now people use the telephone or the computer instead of dialoguing with the child.
Absolutely.
And so it keeps them quiet. You put that phone in their face, that kid ain't saying nothing.
At all. At all.
Yeah.
At all.
And so it does a couple things. One, it diminishes his ability to communicate in the future. They did experiments after World War II, during the Nazi invasion of France. There were a lot of kids who were orphaned, who lived in the woods.
Yeah.
Okay. And what they found was, the war lasted, about 5 years, that over that period of time, many of them were like just living like animals in the woods. They never learned to talk, communicate properly.
No interaction.
No interaction. So later now, at 8 or 9 years old, they still couldn't talk because everything has a season. It's a spiritual principle. There's a time when you should learn how to talk and to communicate.
Right.
And that time, your vocal cords develop in a certain kind of way.
Correct.
And when those kids never had that communication, they never ever really learned to talk. They just made grunts and whatnot.
Right.
And so with our children today, we let them look at that phone all the time. At least they're hearing stuff and seeing stuff, but they're not getting the practice of communication. And that's something that we not just we as a people, but we as human beings need to really look at that.
Right.
Because if we don't teach our children how to communicate, the Chinese proverb says this: "He who runs out of words casts the first stone."
Wow. Wow. Yeah,
See?
that's deep. That's really
Yeah.
deep. That's
And
amazing.
so as long as we can dialogue, we don't have to fight.
Correct. Because there's
But
always a
once
way
we
to get
can't
it.
dialogue, we're gonna fight.
There's always a way to get, communication across. And when that stops is when conflict arises. That's a beautiful. That's really deep.
Yeah.
One of the things that I was very interested in was when I was watching listening to some of your quotes with the Life Skill Institute, and I thought this was one of the most interesting things. When you're at the end of your rope, tie a knot and hold on. And I was like, you know what? That definitely that kind of stopped me in my tracks, because a lot of people will say I've had it. I don't know how much more I can take. This particular set of circumstances, and you're like, hey, you got to find a way to hold on to that one last hope that you have.
That's it. That's it. Well, that's the law of persistence. To hang in there no matter what. When the road gets tough, and see, this is whenever you have challenges, I try to train people now to flip the script.
Yeah.
So anytime you have a challenge, something blocking your way, that's really saying, ask the question, what is this situation trying to teach me?
Yeah.
What must I learn now to get past this?
Right.
So you look at somebody like Michael Jordan. Jordan, I'm in Wilmington, North Carolina. He got cut from the team.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he got cut. Now, some people, they get cut, they're going to get mad with the coach.
Yep.
They're going to go off and do something else. But Michael had that attitude, let me tie a knot in the end of my rope.
Oh, yeah.
They cut me. What can I do? I got to get better.
Yep.
I got to practice more. I got to understand the game. It's not just the shooting. I got to go. I want to be not where the ball is. I want to be where the ball's going to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. What's so amazing about that is that, think of all the things that wouldn't have happened if he had gave up, right? The logo, the shoes, like an entire cultural phenomenon built around one individual would have been never occurred if he would have just took his ball, quote unquote, and went home.
That's it. That's it. We wouldn't be talking about. And think about this now. When he made his sneaker deal, he wasn't even a big star.
No.
He wasn't even. See, if he had waited, he probably would have never made the deal. But one of the key things to understand about success is timing.
Yes.
When you have an idea, God never gives you a problem without a solution.
Yeah.
So if you have a vision, if they say you don't get a vision without a provision. And so when he said, I want to have sneakers named after me, I'm sure most of the people laughed like, you ain't nobody.
Nobody had a deal. The only person that had a shoe deal, the only person that had a shoe deal somewhat before that, I understand, was Clyde Frazier. He had Converse, I believe.
Yeah.
But even that was, but he was the first with the hats and the dress up, but not a signature. This is him on the logo.
Yeah. Well, I have a Clyde Frazier story. I knew Clyde in New York.
That's
we
amazing.
were dating the same girl for a minute. One of these days on another program, I'll tell that story.
I want to hear that one. Yeah, we got to do a part 2 because, first of all, I mean, that's amazing.
But Michael had a vision. And see, when you have a vision, if you hold to your vision, that's what persistence is about.
Yeah.
If you hold to your vision, no matter what,
the
vision is an idea, it's a vibration. And if you hold to that vision, it will manifest.
That's beautiful. That's absolutely. There's some things that I haven't touched on yet. And, you do master classes as well, too. And you were also director of the Science Living Institute of New York. Can you talk about those two things, please?
Sure. Now, we're doing a master class now. At the end of the year, I like to do a webinar called New You for the New Year. And the idea is this. Can you imagine if you're on an airplane expends 80% of its gasoline getting off the ground.
I did not know that.
Once it's at the air, it basically is just cruising. And when they call it cruise control,
Yeah, I did not even think about that. Never crossed my mind.
Because once it gets off the ground, it's literally, some people say, well, how can a machine that weighs thousands of pounds, literally the air holds it up.
Yeah.
That's why the plane flies.
Yeah.
And so the New You for the New Year says, don't wait until next year.
For sure.
To change your life. Let's spend these last days of this year getting off the ground, so that when the next year comes, when 2026 comes, when whatever next year comes, that you are already in flight,
That's
that
amazing.
you've
Yeah,
already done
definitely.
four things, the new you. Number one, you've assessed your situation. You've looked at what your strengths and what your weaknesses are, what you're good at and what you're not good at. You don't beat yourself up. We do something called the Ben Franklin method, where we lay out all the positive things that you accomplished,
Okay.
all your successes. Okay.
Okay.
And you, like, if you can imagine a sheet of paper divided down, and on this side are
Yeah.
victories, and on this side over here are lessons. You never have a defeat.
Right.
That's another mindset. There's never a defeat. It's always a lesson.
Beautiful.
It's like, I won't sit on that hot stove again.
For sure. For sure.
You know, I won't walk up to Big Willie and call him a name.
Yeah, you're gonna think, it's dead. You're gonna think twice about taking that whooping, right? That was,
Yeah.
it's a
Okay. So
Leroy Brown, so to speak. Big bad
that's
Leroy.
it. That's it, man. Don't go mess with Leroy. Okay. So the idea is that they assess your situation. If you look at the performance you've had over the last year, if you have more victories than lessons,
Yes.
then you say, okay, I'm doing okay. Pat yourself on the back
Yes.
and make some minor adjustments.
Correct.
If you got more lessons than victories, you say, oh my goodness, I need an overhaul.
Right.
I need a checkup from the neck up and from the heart down.
Yeah. Right. And it's humbling.
So,
that's hard. It's really hard.
It's humbling. And see, and you got to be honest with yourself. You got to look in that mirror. And when you recognize that energy equivalent, if these things are happening to you, it say, hey, I did it.
Yeah.
I caused these things to happen.
Absolutely.
And we don't like to admit that.
No, it's self-reflection is very difficult, and sometimes it's when you actually write it down, and get it out of your head, it becomes that much more powerful, because then you can actually stare at it. It's no different than, I've told the story to different other guests. I'm physically active. I do martial arts and I work out. But I always had an image that I was in shape until I saw an actual video of what somebody was videotaping of me doing martial arts. And I saw how out of shape, like physically, I was like, I'm not anywhere close to what I thought was. And so when that image hit me is when my reality finally, when the rubber met the road moment, so to speak, because there was no hiding about how I looked.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, that's bad. And so then it became, okay, now I'm going to focus on nutrition and exercise in more specific manners. And then all of a sudden, now I'm better to a place where I need to be. But that picture was that writing, so to speak.
Yes. And so based on that self-reflection now, part 2 is what we call the address. In other words, so when you saw that vision of yourself, you say, I got to be more discerning about my diet.
Yep.
I need to have a better practice schedule. My regimen needs to pick up. You are able now to see the changes that are necessary to create that vision that you want to have for yourself.
Absolutely. Yes.
Then the third part of the new you is, once you've seen the changes that you need to make, now create a new vision.
Yeah.
See?
Right.
Your old vision was inoperable. Once you saw the mirror of it, you're like, okay, that vision is done.
Can't happen. It can't be like that.
Can't happen.
It can't be like that.
So now that I'm on my new regiment, let me create a new vision for myself. And now, based on that new vision, part 4 is now let me do an action plan that will take me there. Let me set up my schedule now for my workouts. Let me figure out if I'm a personal trainer and whatnot. Let me figure out how I'm going to market myself better so I can pay my bills while I'm working out.
Right.
So these 4 keys now: assess where you are, address the changes you need to make, set new goals, develop a new vision, and then an action plan that you can follow
right
from this point on, so that next year you open the year wide open. I mean, you're like rolling.
Yeah.
And I invite your listeners. We have a webinar coming up on as a matter of fact, this Saturday.
I saw that.
On the 13th. But newyouforthenewyear.com, www.newyouforthenewyear.com, and you can get more information about the webinar.
And and the thing
even if you're late, you go to that site and you'll get information where we'll record it, and we'll be having some other follow-ups on it. But newyouforthenewyear.com.
I think the most amazing thing is that the class I saw was I meet no one but me. Right.
Yes.
And I was like,
Yes.
wow, this
Yes.
all of this is centered on a better version. And but you're excellent at not ego, self betterment. It's not
Mhm.
about pride. It's not about ego or narcissism. It's about finding a better version of yourself to get yourself in a better place financially, spiritually, emotionally, confidence wise. It resonates, but it's not sitting back and saying, I'm the biggest, baddest dude on the block.
Yes. Yes. That's powerful, Rashad. And that's something that you have to learn, that humility.
Oh, yeah.
You have to learn that patience. Many, when I'm working with young people, I try to share them the power of patience. One of the great spiritual leaders is a book called Siddhartha. Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. He was a
Okay.
German writer.
Okay.
And Siddhartha is kind of made on the mold of the Buddha,
Yeah. Yes,
of the
yes,
Eastern
yes, yes.
philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Siddhartha said he had three qualities that gave him the ability to do anything. And the first quality is I can think.
Yeah.
Because out of my thoughts, my reality comes. If you can think it, you can do it. If you
Absolutely.
can think it, you can be it. The first law of success says, a mind shall have whatsoever it thinks in its heart.
Hmm.
So I can think. His second principle was, I can fast.
Whew.
And that meant that he was now in control of his physical being,
Hmm.
so that the things didn't pull him off. So that wine, women, a song. Okay, won't pull him off. In other words, his appetites won't rule him.
Right.
You know,
Right.
as a martial artist, if you let your appetites rule you, you'll be overweight,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
out of shape.
Absolutely. And get your butt
You know,
kicked.
that's it.
And get your butt kicked.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Because
and
what's the third
mhm.
one? I'm sorry.
The third one is I can wait,
Mm,
and the wait means he has patience,
mm.
because he recognizes that everything has a cycle. And sometimes you may want something and it can't happen, not because you don't have the ability to attract it. It's just not that cycle.
That's a hard thing to admit.
Yes.
That's a hard
Yes.
thing to admit. That is one of the most challenging things because, especially in the era of the internet, when people only see, the visual of what something or someone created, but they weren't
Mm-hmm.
privy to the prototype, the testing, the behind the scenes works, the failures. They only see the big Google of the conglomerate, but they didn't see in 1995, 96 when those guys were in Stanford, coding privately by themselves. And then finally it came out in 1998.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. That's a great
Yeah.
realization,
You
Rashad.
know,
Yeah.
you only see, it started off as a PhD project, right? And so here
Mm-hmm.
these guys are, and they got rejected, when they, when I believe when they first tried to get it off the ground and try to sell it, and then ultimately becomes one of the, greatest success stories of history. Now it's
Yes.
a
Yeah.
terminology of looking something up. I Googled it, right? I Google,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
you know,
Well, advance is always like that. Gandhi said, whenever you come through with a new idea, he said, at first they laugh at you.
yeah,
And they laughed at them, man. Google, what's this? I
yeah,
don't even like the name. It sounds like some kind of game.
yeah, yeah, yep,
Yeah. And says, and so that it's first they laugh at you, like Muhammad Ali.
absolutely,
And he said, and then they fight you.
yep,
They tell you all the reasons you can't do it.
yep,
You don't have what it takes. You're not smart enough. Nobody's ever done it before. All those
yep,
negative things.
yep,
But he said the third thing is, once you prevail and go through that, you win.
absolutely, 100%. I mean, look at him versus Sonny Liston, right? Like, like everybody and their mother was like, this kid's crazy. What does he think,
Yeah.
And then, he did it a second time. And then the iconic image of him standing over Sonny Liston. I mean, Sonny Liston's the baddest man that, nobody wanted any pieces of that guy. Terrifying.
But Ali said, I float like a butterfly, sting like a bee.
It should, yeah.
Sonny was flat footed. My
Yeah.
dad was a boxer, and my dad fought like Sonny. He just kept moving to you. He just kept coming at you, till he just wore you down.
Yeah. And anybody who's ever boxed, don't let the YouTube videos fool you. Getting blasted in the face is a life altering experience. I'll tell you that. It really, truly, getting hit in the face is oof. I'll keep it
Yeah.
PG. It's a different level of pain.
Well, in a boxing match, so you may throw 180 punches
Land
and
25.
land 150. Okay. and you won. But the guy you were fighting, he threw 135, so you still got hit 135 times.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the crazy part. Like, and I don't think people realize, like, your arms get tired from blocking, just from blocking. You'd be like,
Yeah,
just from keeping your hands up.
yeah,
But that's life, right? So, life is all about, I'm going to get punched back, but if I have my guard up, if I have defense, if I'm disciplined, if I can pull myself off the canvas, all these things that you teach and all these things that
yeah,
your generation has bestowed upon us, it
yes.
resonates. And that's why, I started a podcast, primarily it was because I'm a curious person. Somewhere in the universe, my curiosity lined me up with you. And it's an honor and a pleasure to be able to pick your brain and be able to drop those nuggets and in the wisdom of myself and my audience.
Well, I tell you, Rashad, it's funny you picked. We have a new book coming out. It's called The Life Lessons, and it's a 4-volume series. But in volume 1, the number 1 topic you picked it was the 3 topics we deal with. It's called Life Lessons for Your Success. It's on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
But the 3 topics in volume 1 are procrastination,
Oh yeah,
self-doubt,
yeah.
and then lack of focus.
Yeah, and those are universal things, ladies and gentlemen. Because I'll tell you what, if take it from a guy who took forever to start his own podcast, right? It was just like, I'll start that tomorrow, and then one day it finally clicked. Where tomorrow was today.
Wow.
Tomorrow was today, and it was like, stop telling you, because then like at some point you just start talking to yourself, and you're never gonna do it.
Yes. Wow.
So
That's beautiful, man. Well, yeah. I'll tell you this. I know we're at the end of the podcast. Of course, I invite your listeners to visit our website, herbertharris.com.
Absolutely.
But one of the things you asked me about the Science of Living Institute, and that's when I worked with Reverend Ike in New York.
Yes.
People don't realize Reverend Ike was he was a great spiritual teacher. Now, he packaged it in a way. Yeah. He said many times you have to package stuff so that people can get it on their level.
Right.
Okay? So he'd have the prayer cloth, okay, or he had the blessed shower cap one time, man. But he would put ideas, and so my job as the director of the Science of Living Institute, I would help massage a lot of his messages. I recorded a lot of the audios and stuff you see online now. I recorded them, and our church was actually a movie theater.
Wow.
It was designed by the same person who built Radio City Music Hall.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yes.
And held 4,500 people. And so we had it set up as a television studio and a recording studio. So a lot of that stuff, that was a part of my job, to take his messages, get them recorded, edit them, and get them out there quickly. Science of Living Institute helped a lot of people understand a lot of the things we're talking about right now.
And so I'm eternally grateful. And, your books are on Amazon. You spoke on your website. You're a public speaker. And, the 35 minutes that we talk haven't begun to even scratch the surface of all your accomplishments. But in the consciousness of utilization of your time, I want to thank you profusely for your opportunity, for the chance for you to be on my show. And my listeners hopefully will be encouraged to attend your master classes and learn more about you and your book and your work.
Thank you so much, Rashad. You keep up the good work, man, because the ball is in your court now.
Yes, it is.
We delivered it to you.
Yeah. You can trust me. Yeah. And the first thing is positive mindset. And so, that's one of the reasons I did this show, was because I always believe that, universal attraction of positivity. So, Dr. Herbert Harris, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Thank you, my friend. Take care. Remember this, the best is yet to come.
Absolutely. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Same to you, my friend.